Okay, so let's talk about sound and music in Maya. This is a general discussion of the use of sound files in Maya. It's by no means exhaustive or complete, but it does hopefully get you in the right direction for uploading audio files into Maya. Now, the first thing to say is that when you're animating, if you really want to do a proper sound mix, you're going to need to use some editorial software. Something like Premiere or Final Cut will get you much further. Maya, you can only load in one sound file at a time for one thing, so it's quite limited. But obviously, if we're animating to music or animating a character talking, you've got to be able to load a sound file into Maya. That is obviously very important. When you're doing your acting exercises, lip sync and dialogue exercises, the first thing you want to do is load up the audio into Maya. You always find the audio and then start animating, never, ever, ever, ever the other way around. Okay, so number one, what kind of sound files can we use in Maya? And the answer is not very many. The only two file types that I know of that work in Maya are .wavs and .iff files. And I don't think anything else works. So what you're going to have to do is search for WAV files, or else convert, if you have any other file types, you can convert them into WAVs using either Premiere or QuickTime Pro. QuickTime Pro is an especially useful piece of software. It allows you to export video and audio files as multiple file types. It costs about $30 from Apple, but it's a really useful piece of software. I highly recommend it. And you can open up various audio files and then export them as WAVs. Very useful, and we need WAVs or IFFs in order to work in Maya. Now, when let's say you're animating a bit of lip sync, a bit of audio, and you want to use that bit of audio in your shot, the simplest thing to do is simply to drag the piece of audio into your timeline. And then it should appear automatically in the timeline. However, we should take a couple of steps before that, and the first thing you want to do is copy the sound file into your project folder. And if you look in your project folder, you will find a subfolder marked audio. At least I think it's called audio. So if it's not called audio, it's called sound. So you search for the sound or audio folder and deposit your audio file there. Then you can go to File, Import, and import it into the shot, and that will import it into the shot. And then you go down into the timeline, right-click in the timeline, and the sound file should appear there, and then select it. There's also another video here which you should definitely take a look at, where I demonstrate this in Maya. But that's the basic process, and it should, in theory, be reasonably straightforward. If the audio doesn't import for some reason, you can try opening it up, open up your WAV file in QuickTime Pro, and then re-export it as a WAV, and that should fix the codec if there's a problem with the file for some reason. Okay, so now that you've imported your audio into the timeline, you may find that the audio is in the wrong place. In other words, you want to add some time at the beginning of the shot, or you want to slide it around. And basically, the way you do this is you in the timeline, you right-click on the audio, and you go to the options box, click on the options box, and then here, that will open up a window. Here the audio is called hello, and you can change the offset value here. So if you add, let's say we're starting to animate here at frame 101, if we wanted to advance the audio by 10 frames, we would change the offset to 111, and that would add, that would slide the audio forward by 10 frames. Equally, we could change this number to 91, and it would slide the audio back 10 frames. So you use the offset button to move the audio around in your timeline. Very, very useful and very simple function. Now, if you want to delete audio files, sometimes it happens that you import more than one audio file into a shot and you don't want them there. It's a little bit fiddly to get rid of them, but here's a way to do it. Go into the trax editor. That's under Window here. You go to Window, Animation Editors, Trax Editor, and then in the Trax Editor you then select the audio file and delete it. But you can't delete it down in the timeline. You have to go through the Trax Editor. Okay, what if you want to edit a sound clip? Obviously, if you're editing sound clips, the best software to have is either Premiere or Final Cut. Both of those bits of software come with a free 30-day trial. At least I'm certain that Premiere does. I think Final Cut does. So it's highly recommended to download a 30-day trial version of Premiere and Final Cut. But if money is tight, you might want to wait till you're editing your demo reel before you do that. And there are some online tools, online editing software, which are very, very useful. One of them is called aviary.com, and this allows you to edit audio online. So it's just like having your own bit of software on your computer, except you're doing it remotely on their servers. Also, QuickTime Pro is very good for editing clips. I use it all the time. It's not as sophisticated as Premiere, but it's good for simple and straightforward audio editing. So I highly recommend you get that bit of software as well. Now, a question that often comes up in mine is, where can we get free sound effects? Obviously, when we're animating things, let's say you're animating a character throwing a punch or falling down, or you know, something happens in the shot that requires a sound effect. And of course, you can record your own sound effects using your own computer and a microphone. Very easy to do nowadays. And that's called Foley. It's called creating your own Foley. And the reason it's called Foley is there was a guy many years ago on the Warner Brothers lot in Los Angeles who was called Foley. And he did all the sound effects for the Warner Brothers movies for years and years and years. And because he was the pioneer of this stuff, after he died, they continued calling it Foley. So it's still called Foley today, but you can also find free sound effects online. And there are a few websites which are really good. They're listed here: www.findsounds.com, freesound.org, and moviewavs.com. And you'll find all kinds of free sound effects. Usually they come with a Creative Commons license, which is to say that you can use them for free, but you must give credit to the person who created them. There's lots and lots of stuff out there now on a Creative Commons license, and it's amazing how much free material there is for us to use, but we must always remember that we must give credit to the people who created it. Now, if you want to convert a sound file into a WAV, because sometimes you'll find sound files online that aren't WAVs, they might be MP3s or all sorts of different file types, you can actually use an online website called www.mediaconverter.com, and that will help you convert MP4s into WAVs. So there are lots of options for converting files from one file type to another. Obviously, if you have Premiere or QuickTime Pro, you can use those as well. What if Maya doesn't like my WAV file? Sorry, what if there's a bit of a typo in there. That should say, what if Maya doesn't like my WAV file? I mean, this unfortunately happens quite a lot, and as I've said before, you can try opening the file in QuickTime Pro, or you can try opening it in MediaConverter.com and re-export it as a new WAV file. Sometimes WAV files lose their codecs for some reason, and sometimes opening it and re-exporting it as a WAV will fix the problem. If you're doing voice recordings, if you want to record dialogue, there's a nice bit of software that comes with your Mac called GarageBand, if you have a Mac, and that's very useful. And if you go to the podcast settings and you use male narrator or female narrator, you can then just use the mic in your computer to record audio. But better to buy an external mic or a headset, a pair of headphones with a mic, something like that, and you'll find that that's a better way of recording audio. Now, of course, unlike Jeffrey Katzenberg at DreamWorks, you're not going to have access to expensive Hollywood voice talent, so you're going to be left like the rest of us, recording your friends and voices, getting people to do voices for you. There are lots and lots of WAV files online, but you can also record your own audio if you've got friends who are actors or friends who fancy themselves as actors. It's a great way to get free audio, is to have them record the line of dialogue. Here's a little section on troubleshooting. Often audio just doesn't work in Maya for some reason, and it's very common for this to happen. So here's a brief checklist to go through if you are unable to load up your audio into Maya. And the first thing to do is to check that you've actually copied the sound file into your project folder, and then make sure that you have set your project to that folder. This is a really common mistake that students make. Either they don't copy the sound file into the project folder, or they have not properly set their project. If you do both of those things, then the sound file should work. Secondly, make sure that it is a .wav or .iff file, preferably a WAV. If you are having trouble, try converting it at www.mediaconverter.com, as we have previously discussed. And then also try adjusting the offset. The audio will automatically come in at frame 1. If you start your animation at frame 101, then you're going to have to adjust the offset in order to add 100 frames to the start of the audio, so that it actually matches up with your animation. Okay, so that's a basic introduction to the problems, some of the problems that arise out of importing audio into Maya. Like I said, it's by no means exhaustive, but it should hopefully get you started. So good luck and happy hunting.